Hi, I'm Trisha at Club Scrap, and you've arrived at the Violet Bonus Card Workshop. And here's how this worked. We released a full page kit called Violet. It's a special release, so it was not sent automatically to our members, but it has proven to be a very popular collection. And we decided to create a bonus card cut-apart so that you could transform the page kit into cards a little bit more easily. So in order to follow along with me on this workshop, you have a couple of options. At the very least, you need to have the Violet bonus card cut-aparts. And then I'm also choosing to add the bonus card print too, which is a little bit of a smaller, sweet pattern. And then you need to have the Violet page kit if you want to make the cards exactly as I have them. Now, there are many ways you could interpret these instructions, but either way, I think you'll find them very helpful. The cards are very easy. We're gonna make a total of a dozen 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch cards. Those fit into that standard invitation style envelope, which I think you'll really like. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started, and I'll talk you through this process. Now I have my instructions right here, and on here are the literal ingredients that we'll be using to make our dozen cards. And what's interesting about this is I'm not using the entire kit of paper here like I normally try to do. There are many sheets of paper. We're going to use about half of them, so you could literally make a double batch of cards if you wanted to, if you follow these instructions. So here I have the contents all around me. I have the ribbon and embellishments, but mainly the paper. I'm going to grab several of the plain colored sheets of paper. We're going to start with locating from that kit a sheet of light purple, and then a piece of that lovely yellow, and then a sheet of dark purple. This paper is just gorgeous. Another yellow, then a light purple, and then this gold color. It's like a greenish gold color. Then one sheet of ivory, and you can set aside all the rest of the papers. So that includes the prints. If you can use these prints as well on your cards, instead of when I say the print, you can grab any one of the prints that are in there. The same thing is true here too. There's lots of plain paper. You could probably make another batch of cards with what you've got here, and you'll still have the page cut-aparts left over. So it's quite a bit left over, but you know, that's how the maps turn out, and that's how we're gonna go for it, because these cards are really fun to make. You're gonna love this recipe. Okay, so now I'm reaching for those bonus items. I'm gonna grab 2 pieces of the bonus print. Now, what makes this bonus print a little different is that it is text weight, which means that your cards will be a little bit lighter weight, you know, keep the postmaster happy and all that. I'm going to put those 2 sheets face down, and then I have my bonus cut-aparts. So I'll grab the one that has the largest rectangles and put that down first, face down, and then the smaller, all the smaller pieces, that'll go down next. I'll flip that whole stack over, so we're right back at the top with the light purple where we started, and I'm going to set these papers aside to my left. So I usually keep my untrimmed papers to my left so that my other pieces can fall down to my right. And then I'm going to stay organized with my accordion pocket file. So I'll put the lip of this under my trimmer base, and that way I have these pockets labeled A, B, C, and D that I can file the pieces into. Usually the D pocket is filled with any kind of scraps or pieces that I didn't use. And this time I happened to grab some just floral thin cutting dies and my die cutting machine, and I transformed some of those scraps into little die cut flowers. That is completely optional too, but you know what? Sometimes I like to exercise those creative muscles and just maybe give you some inspiration to use other materials you may have on hand as well. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to turn to page 1 of the Violet Card Cut-Apart Instructions. And I will say also, you might be watching this with a different theme. In that case, you're at the right place. You're just going to follow and substitute the papers as indicated. So down the road, I am planning on releasing another theme with this same map or this same formula. So if you're watching that, you're in the right place also. Okay? Now, before we can begin and cut this light purple paper, we need to make sure the grain direction of the paper is cooperating with the future fold we'll be making in that paper. So I test the grain by like holding the paper by the center of an edge, give it a wiggle and study. Is it stiff or is it floppy? And I'm going to compare to the other side. Well, now you can see right away how floppy this is. So I'm going to make sure that the paper flops most easily from left to right when I drop it in my trimmer base. And that too will be indicated on your instructions by that arrow pointing from left to right. It's just the way the paper should dip most easily. Then I'll do the same thing with the yellow. I can tell right away this is pretty stiff. This is pretty droppy. So that will go in left to right. We will trim both of these papers at the same time. If you're not comfortable with that, no worries. Just do it one sheet at a time and then just back up so that you can walk through it again. We're gonna use my Fisker's guillotine trimmer for the best, straightest cuts. Make sure the paper is flush with the top edge of the trimmer base here. And I'm gonna find 10 3/4. So every column on here is 1/4 inch. So if you're new to measuring, because I know some of you like to eyeball, 10 plus 3 columns to the left. 1, 2, 3. That's 10 3/4. Stabilize on the clear bar before you make that slice. And then once you have sliced, make sure you don't move that paper that fell anywhere so that I know where it is. Now we're going to slide down to 8 1/2. Then let's rotate so that the paper is horizontal. Trim at 11. And 5 1/2. So again, to find the 5, then you go left 2 columns. 1, 2. All right, now what you've just made here are 4 card bases, and those need to be scored. So we're going to set them aside in a separate pile so we can score them. And then we have this little strip that fell from the end. You can put that in pocket D David. And then we have this other strip. It's a little wider than the final strip. This one's 2 1/4 by 12. We'll trim this at 10 1/2. And 5 1/4. Notice I still push down on that clear bar to make those strips, and all 4 of those panels, those go in pocket B, bravo. And there is a small scrap that fell from the end for pocket D, as well as this long strip. Now we're going to chase down a new formula or a new cutting diagram, but we still have to find the grain direction and make sure the paper dips most easily from left to right. So we're going to do that with the dark purple and with the yellow. I'll cut at 11 and 6 3/4. So 6, 1, 2, 3 columns toward the 7. Rotate and trim at 11 and 5 1/2. If I'm going too fast, you can adjust your playback settings on YouTube to the playback speed to like 0.75, and that'll slow me down. All right, these 4 pieces that all match, they're kind of a weird size. They're going to be scored, so set them aside in that other pile. And then there are 2 strips that fell from the end for pocket D. And then we have this 4 1/4 inch strip here. We'll cut this one at 10 1/2, 7 1/2, and 3 3/4. And you've just made these 2 sets of this odd rectangle. This needs to be scored, so I'm going to set those aside. And then you have a larger rectangle here for pocket A. And then you have 2 little strips. Those are for pocket D, David. And this long strip, once again, D, David. Now let's move on to this light purple. Once again, it dips left to right before you place it in your trimmer. And then we have this gorgeous textured gold color. Again, dipping left to right. So light purple and gold at the same time, if you do feel comfortable with that. And our first cut here is at 11 3/4. It's a really huge number. So 11, 1, 2, 3 columns toward the 12. Stabilize, very important for a large sheet doubled up like this. And then trim at 9. Then rotate the 9-inch piece so it's horizontal. Trim at 11 and 5 1/2. Once again, you've made 4 card bases here, so I'll set those aside to be scored. And the little scrappy fell from the end, going in pocket D, David. Now these strips I'm going to trim at 8 and 4. And I'm going to place these in pocket A. And at this time, if you have a scoring tool, you're going to need that right now. And I'm just going to place the tool right on top of my trimmer because we're going to be using it for such a short time. And once again, now the next paper queued up here is the ivory. I'm going to place that into the score pile so it dips most easily from left to right. And I'm going to score at 3 inches. I like to use a metal tipped stylus for scoring. It seems to work really well. And then I'm going to take this paper and I'm going to flip it. So from bringing the bottom up to the top, and I'm going to score again at 6 inches. That's it. For now, let's set the score pal aside. With my scored sheet now in my trimmer, I've got a line at 3 inches and a line at 6 inches. They're running parallel to the blade and they're toward the left side of my paper. And I'm going to trim at 9. Stabilize. Now rotate the 9-inch paper and cut at 9 again. And then 6 and 3. All right, gather up the 4 pieces that are scored now, right? You've got scoring. So the reason we did that is to save a lot of time. So instead of scoring, flipping, scoring, scoring, flipping, scoring, and so on, we did all 4 pieces with only 2 lines. 1 score, 1 flip, 1 score. Big time saver. These can go right into pocket C since they're already scored. Now we have this last strip here. We'll trim at 8.5 and 4 1/4. Gather the 2 larger pieces and place them in pocket A. And then the smaller one can go in D, David, along, oh, I forgot to have you file this little purple strip. Obviously that's D as well. And we're moving on to the print. Now again, you could use the print from the kit, being aware that it's cover weight. This is a text weight print with a little bit of a smaller pattern. Totally your call, okay? Then we're gonna cut this at 10, and the grain direction doesn't matter because we're not folding this paper. So we're cutting at 10, and then 8, and 4. Now the piece in the base of your trimmer plus the one that just fell, let's place them side by side and trim at 10.5 and 5 1/4. All 4 of these rectangular panels go in pocket A, alpha. There are 2 little pieces that fell. I believe I ended up using these in pocket A as well, so, or in card set A, so you can plop them in there for now. And then you have 2 more strips here that should be the same. We're gonna place those horizontally into the trimmer and cut at 10 and 5. And these 4 pieces go in pocket B, bravo. And now I see that I've left and orphaned this tiny little strip of gold, so that can go in D as well. Sorry about that. When I'm teaching a class, everyone raises their hand and says, well, what do I do with this? So no one was here to tell me I'd missed those. There also are 2 little like squarish scraps. You can put those in D as well. And we're moving on to the other large 12 by 12 print that we will cut at 11, 8 1/4, 5 1/2, and 2 3/4. So the piece in the trimmer and the one that just fell, we're gonna stack them and trim at 10.5 and 5 1/4. All 4 of these that are the same, pocket C, Charlie. And there are some little pieces that fell from the end. You can place those in D. And then you have 2 more strips that are the same width. We'll trim these at the same time, at 11, 8 1/4, 5 1/2, and 2 3/4. Gather all of those squares up. You will also find 2 smaller little 1-inch scraps. So all the squares, they go in pocket C, Charlie, and the little scraps, D, David. Now I happen to know that I used this strip in set A. I didn't put this in the instructions, but we're gonna cut this at 11. This is a bonus that you watching the video get these tips, and 5 1/2. And that gives me 2 strips I can use on the inside of my card on set A. I might add those, we'll see. And of course, then you have this little 1-inch square. Here we are at the Cutaparts, and on the outside edges, we have instructions to trim away the excess paper according to the guidelines. And that's just so that the registration is perfect when we go to trim our Cutaparts. So I'm going to place this here, and I'm going to cut a little shy of the little guide because it's really hard to see that line when the paper is this large. When I rotate now, I'm going to be looking at the right edge of my trimming blade here. And if you're new to this, just take your time, and I'm going to visually line up that mark with the outside edge of the silver blade, not the black part of the trimmer, but the blade itself. And then I'm going to rotate and repeat that on this edge. Make sure I'm as accurate as I can. B. And then on this rotation, I should be able to look at the 12 on my left and then see things lined up pretty well on my right, and they are. And then finally, I'll take this last cut here at the 12 to shave off any excess and throw those little scraps away. Now I can cut at 11 3/4, and then visually, I should have said the dots would be on your right, but hopefully you've noticed that by now. Then we're sliding to the 8, and then the 4, always cutting between the pieces of artwork. Now, because these two strips have the same exact cutting pattern, I'm going to stack them and trim horizontally at 10 1/2 and 5 1/4. These 4 larger pieces can go in pocket B, Bravo, and these 2 pieces can go in pocket A. Now, this next strip we'll trim with the lonely little flowers on the right. We'll start out at 10, and then 7 1/2, 5, and 2 1/2. And gathering the 4 pieces that are the same, pocket A, Alpha, and I use the other end piece in A as well. Moving on to the final sheet of Cutaparts, I will just do a generous cut on that first edge and then rotate through just like I did before, lining up the guide mark with the edge of the silver blade. And once you see it, you'll be all set to go. This is probably my least favorite task of the whole process because it's a little bit tedious. And it was funny because my colleague Karen and I were working on this stuff, and she said the same thing. So we agree it's not my favorite thing to do, but it just gets everything looking better. Now I'm going to place this in the trimmer so that it says sending heartfelt sympathy. That'll be in the upper right corner. And our first cut here is going to be at 8 3/4, 6 1/4, and 3 1/2. Rotating, this is nice and easy. We're going to cut at 9, 6, and 3. So 9, 6, and 3. Gather all the pieces that are the same here. Pocket B, Bravo. Then we have this strip where there's a little guy on the right. We'll trim at 11, 8 1/4, 5 1/2, and 2 3/4. Gather up these squares, pocket C, Charlie, and I'm pretty sure I used this in C as well. And then we have this beautiful strip here. Make sure that the flower arrangement's on the right. We'll cut at 10, 7 1/2, 5, and 2 1/2. All of these pieces that are square, pocket C, and this last piece, pocket A. It was a scrap. You can really put it anywhere you want. I just ended up putting it in A. And then finally, our last strip here, we've got the florals on the right. We'll make our first cut at 10, then 8. Notice the even numbers, 6, 4, and 2. The 4 pieces that have the text on them will go in pocket A, Alpha, And then you have these little guys. We'll trim each one horizontally. I'm gonna do one at a time. We'll cut it 2 1/2 and 1 1/4. And for these little guys, just rely on your little clear bar to keep everything level. Again, 2 1/2, 1 1/4. So just use your index finger. It holds that paper from wiggling. The 4 larger rectangles, pocket A. The 2 smaller ones go in pocket C. And that, my friends, was your last cut. So I'm going to lock my trimmer blade, support my accordion pocket file before I move my trimmer, because that's what's holding it up. And from now on, I'll lay it on its back, and I'm gonna grab my score pal. Now we had this whole stack of papers we'd set aside to be scored. So I'll start it with the first piece, which happens to be this gold color. And it should be, when we place it horizontally into the score pal, it should read out at 9 inches. I'll score it 3. And when you're scoring this, push firmly enough because this is a heavier paper. Then flip the paper from the bottom to the top and score at 6. And then we'll repeat that with this lovely purple. We'll score at 3. Again, it's a 9-inch piece. And 6 after you flip. Score at 3 on the second sheet of gold, flip it, score at 6. Then grab your final sheet of light purple, score at 3, flip, and score at 6. All of these pieces go in pocket C, Charlie. Then we have these smaller pieces. We're going to place them horizontally into the score pal, and this is important because we don't want it to be vertical where it says 3 3/4. We want it to be horizontal where it says 4 1/4, and we'll score it 3 1/4 on each of them. So there are 4. We have the dark purple piece, 3 1/4. The other yellow, make sure it's horizontal, score it 3 1/4, and the dark purple, score it 3 1/4. All 4 of these pieces go in pocket B. Bravo. Then we have these other odd size pieces. The length when it's in horizontally should read out at 6 3/4, and we're going to score it 4 1/4, which happens to be where there's a nice little asterisk. Again, there will be 4, so horizontally at 4 1/4. Make sure you're pushing firmly on these heavier papers so you have a nice score line to prepare the way for the fold. So all 4 of these sheets go in pocket B. Bravo. And then finally we have 4 more sheets rather, of 5 1/2 by 8 1/2. Score horizontally, again at the asterisk, 4 1/4. Of course, you can pause me as much as needed if you're a little bit slower with the score pal. In time and with practice, you'll be able to keep up with me just fine. And all 4 of these go in pocket A, alpha. And that concludes all the prep work for a dozen cards. I've got 25 minutes of live filming time, and I'm sure I have a few mistakes I'll weed out of there. But 25 minutes to make a dozen cards, be prepped for that is pretty amazing. Well, let's get started with card set A. I'm going to grab my accordion pocket file and empty the contents of pocket A. And initially it's like, wow, that's a lot of stuff. So what I like to do is sort it all out by size. You'll have your card bases. You've got a bunch of panels of various sizes. You have your sentiments, both for the outside and inside of the cards. Those are different sizes. Then you have all these miscellaneous pieces, like these little rectangles. You've got all these other odds and ends, like the prints and things like that I had you put in there. So I'm just sorting through all of those extras. Those will go separate. And we can begin by folding the card bases in half. And what I want you to do, as always, is find the bump of the score line, or the raised part of the score line. Some would call it a mountain, and this is a valley. It's a little valley, but we need to bury that mountain or bury that raised line inside of the fold. And I just got done teaching a bunch of workshops and kind of surveyed the class and asked, did you think that the bump went on the inside or the outside? And a lot of people had the misconception that the bump went on the outside, and that is the opposite of the truth. The bump of the score line goes on the inside of the fold, and the way to remember that real easily is just say to yourself, bury that bump. Bury the bump. Okay, so now I have my folded card bases and I'm going to follow along with my instructions. So we have 2 horizontal and 1 vertical card. I'll start out by putting a purple that's horizontal and then a yellow vertical, another yellow vertical, and a purple horizontal. Now we have a nice little square of cards here. And each one I will add a lovely printed panel. Then we have, from our nestables, we have larger panels, and I'm going to just put an ivory here, and then a purple on this one, and a yellow on this one. Next up, I have too many of these sizes, and that's totally okay. I'm going to add a gold here, a light purple here, a light purple here, and a gold here. Now that leaves me a gold and a purple. I can maybe use it on the inside of the card. Let's go for that. Totally your call though. Then we have our greetings, and the direction will indicate. So memories are like a garden hidden in your heart. That'll go on both horizontal cards. And then a memory is a keepsake of time that lives forever in the heart. And you'll notice all of these cards are really in that sympathy, thinking of you framework, which we thought the art style was perfect for that. 3 of the cards will receive 1, 2, 3. This one I handled a little differently. And in your goodies, your little embellishments that came with your kit, if you're using the kit, each one has a tag, but this one did not. I only had 3 tags, so I worked with what I had. As far as sentiments, I believe they're all the same. Sending heartfelt sympathy, those will go on the inside of the card. The 2 horizontal cards will get this longer strip of the printed panel, the text weight, and the 2 vertical get the shorter strip. Let's see, on this one I used that larger cut apart. Same with this guy. And then here I used the rectangular one, and here I used the giant flowers. Now this is the part where I usually take envelopes, but envelopes were not included in your kit. We do sell the A2, white A2 envelopes separately. So if you need envelopes, you can get them. You could always make envelopes. These are a very standard size that's available. I'm gonna put the contents of 3 of the card sets into envelopes and set them aside. And then the first card that we showed you, let's make this one together. I'm also taking some of this gorgeous silky ribbon and my fabric scissors. I got my adhesive ready to go. You're gonna love how quickly and easily this comes together. For starters, let's take our sentiment here. Memories are like a garden. Okay, then I'm gonna take some of my adhesive and add it to this nesting panel, this gold panel. Again, I'm using my favorite adhesive applicator, and adhesive goes a long, long way. It's always fresh in my mind after I teach classes in person that adhesive is a huge variable in a classroom. And sometimes if you have a lot of layers and you're not using an adhesive like this, you can go through a ton of adhesive in one little class. Now I'm gonna add this to my panel, but I'm gonna shoot for the left and upper portion of the panel just because I have a vision. But what I want to avoid is touching the edges of the panel itself with the corners of this piece. I want to have a little air in between there to prevent what I would call a tangent. So just away from the edge here, here, and here, but kind of up and to the left. Then I have a corner punch here. This has 3 radii. I'm using the smallest one. It's going to make a very, very little rounding of the corner. I mean, it's so minuscule, but I love that. I love that it's tiny, and I can do it much larger too. And I'm going to take this little gem and nest it onto my purple tag. Again, this was a goodie in the kit, if you did the page kit. Now I'm going to take some of this ribbon, find out which way it wants to bend. Ribbon, like paper, has grain, and I'll thread it through the hole in the tag. And just make sure I have enough that it can wrap its way around the top of this panel before I trim off the end. At this point, I'm going to add the tag to the card, and you could do this with foam adhesive too if you wanted to. I guess I had it up enough where I didn't cover the word heart, but I think we still get the idea on my sample anyway. Okay, so now I'll wrap this up and over, and I'll secure this on the back of the panel. You can use your regular adhesive or cellophane tape, whatever you want. And then I'm going to add adhesive to the panel itself. And we will nest this onto the folded card base. For the inside of the card, I mean, this is entirely your call. I will first take this cute little strip here, and I'm going to level it with my grid ruler. Talked about this a lot also teaching classes. Many of you don't use rulers too often, and that's totally fine. I like to. I'm going to go ahead and nest this onto one of those extra Cutaparts because it does fit at scale, which I love. And add this. Finally, the extra Cutapart. I'm going to place it up on this side. Oh, that's so pretty. It kind of balances everything out. So there's your card with your beautiful sentiment. And the last thing I did was added a few of the gems that were included. And these are really a nice, beautiful AB style gem, Aurora Borealis style gem. And instead of putting glue on the gem, I like to put my glue like on the paper with my needle tipped glue applicator. That's Bookbinding Glue. And if you happen to have tweezers or something, I love to just do this. Pick them up, drop them down. And notice that I'm doing this at the very, very last phase of the card. Right? And there we go. Here is my finished dried sample. And I'm going to show you the other cards that have the tag. So I followed a similar protocol here. You've got to get that tag onto that printed panel first before you add it to the folded card base, or you won't be able to wrap the ribbon around to the back. And since I only had 3 cards, that was my protocol. Now for the final one, all I did was straighten everything out, and I wrapped the corner, the upper left, lower right corner of the nested panel before I attached it to the print, then nested it onto the card base. So gorgeous. I hope you love these cards so far. I have already sent out quite a few of my original prototype samples. So what you would then do is take all of the envelopes, or however you have set them aside, of your remaining cards, and you can make them as you wish and whenever you're ready. And let's move on to making the cards prepped in pocket B. I'll empty the pocket, get everything out of there. And once again, it always just seems to work best if you get organized. So I will sort everything out by size, starting with the card bases. You've got some scored panels. Make sure those are handy. And then you've got some longer strips that are plain, some printed strips, and the sentiments. You're gonna love how quickly and easily this one comes together. So as I've mentioned before, bump gets buried. And always before I fold, I make sure that the edges are lining up nicely. And I do like to burnish the fold so that the card stays put and doesn't pop up. If it's really popping up, or if the fold isn't looking right, it could indicate that we unsuccessfully determined the grain direction. When you're trying to fold against the grain, oftentimes the paper will just want to pop right back up. Here again, I am taking these smaller scored pieces and I'm folding to create a 1-inch tab on these pieces, all 4 of them. And then I think we're ready to distribute all of our pieces. I'll turn to page 4 of my instructions to kind of take a peek at how the colors are distributed. But if you don't do it the way I have, it's not wrong, it's just different. So I'm gonna spread out my cards. I guess it's purple, yellow, yellow, purple. And then each one gets this larger panel for the inside. Sending a little love your way, sending a little love your way. And then may you find love in small moments and joy in all things, the other 2. Let's distribute some of these sweet little panels. We'll take a yellow here onto the dark purple, a light purple onto the yellow, a light purple, and again, yellow. Each one gets one of the prints. Oh, this is so beautiful. And then if it's a purple card base, you get a yellow tab. Here you have a yellow tab. And if it's a yellow card base, you get a purple tab. So just alternating colors. And finally, our outer sentiments. So just checking in, and then one day at a time on these two on the bottom. I'll grab an envelope here for the 4th, 3rd, and 2nd card. And I usually just do it this way. So I take the 4th, and I take the 3rd, put it on top of the 4th, and then I take the 2nd, so that it's kind of stacked in the same way the instructions indicate. It's always easy to put everything together at the end. For the ribbon on this one, I'm using this gorgeous 1-inch metallic gold ribbon. I love that these metallic glittery ones don't shed anything. Perhaps we can safely just nest this onto the tabbed piece, making sure the tab is on the right. Now take this inner sentiment here and the tabbed piece and just center the tabbed piece so that this flap wraps around, and we're going to attach it to the back. So flip it over and you can add your adhesive to this panel. The most common mistake I make is just nesting it without attaching the flap. Almost every time, and I almost did it this time too. So with this is going to be like a crisscross flap situation. Now with this closed, I'm going to set it aside for now, and I'll nest the print onto the yellow strip here. And then I'm going to trim some ribbon a little longer on each end than the panel. Make sure I find my grain. That's against the, this would be against the grain. This is going to be with the grain. Do you see how it bends? And I'm going to attach this. I'll wrap it around, and I'm kind of going to go toward the edge, not to it, but just near it. Wrap those ends around to the back. I'll grab some cellophane tape from my dispenser, secure those ribbon ends, add my adhesive, and center this onto the flap of the card. And if your math worked out, that'll fit perfectly. And then this folds over. That's so lovely. In your kit, you also did receive some sweet little embroidered flowers. You can use bookbinding glue, or you can use ATG. I used ATG. And I'm going to attach this kind of to the card like so. I got a little tape passed in the wrong area, so I have to make sure I get that off. And we have a stunning card, and you can write your little note right in this area. Isn't that lovely? You'll make 3 more just like it. You've got one with this exact sentiment, just different colors, and then you have the other one day at a time. And I created my own little punched. It was actually a thin die. Oh, looks like I used this piece right in here. I think I put that in pocket C. Let me grab that. Here it is. So I'll put this in my envelope. And my 4th card. We're all teed up for card set C. So I'm going to empty that pocket and get organized. So my scored card bases, I'm going to bury this bump and burnish it. Then flip the card over to find yet another bump, bury that one, and that creates what I would call an accordion fold or a Z fold or a fan fold, whatever you want to call it. And I'm going to proceed with this one too. And I know that there's a textured side and a smoother side on this gold textured paper. It doesn't really matter at this point, but when we do our final placement on that, you can just make sure that the correct side of the paper is facing the front of the card when it's time. And finally, this last gold one. So here, when I fold this, the wrong side of the paper is facing up. To fix it, just flip it over, okay? And then we have, remember we scored this all at once, the whole entire strip. We scored it at 3 and flipped it and scored at 6. But that gave us 4 individual scored pieces. I love exploring time-saving batch creating tips like that. It's like anything. You're more efficient if you can do the work for many in one fell swoop. I love making cards by the batch. All right, so with this all prepped, I will turn to page, I think it's 5. Yes, page 5. And let's distribute our card bases. So here's purple, gold, and I want to make sure that the mountain fold is like on the right. Mountain fold here. I'm going to do another purple, mountain fold, mountain fold. Now, when I distribute the ivory, mountain fold on the right again to each card. The first fold is a mountain. First fold is a mountain, then a valley. So I'm not sure if you've heard those terms before. Many people have. Each card will receive a print. It's going to end up going here. Maybe I should have added the print first, but you get the idea. And then I'm going to put it next to my cards. They're popping up, but they were scored correctly with the grain. Then 2 printed squares for each card. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Then we have a series of sentiments. So the largest sentiment is the outside sentiment. So the top 2 are daily reminder, daily reminder. The bottom 2 is some days you just need to feel a little extra loved. The inside, daily reminder, be gentle with yourself. And then the other one is thinking of you. I can see now that I distributed this larger panel to this purple card. I originally had that filed in pocket A. Sorry about that. The 4th rectangle was used in pocket C, the 3rd card. Then this skinny guys is here and here. I'll show you how those were used in a minute, but for now, let's take these cards and put them in their envelopes. So I'll grab some more A2 envelopes. I'm going to take all the contents of this pile and place it in an envelope so this is ready to assemble. Then my 3rd card into the envelope. And again, the envelopes are available and sold separately for these, especially for these bonus card kits. I trust that maybe you even have a stash of envelopes you can use, or maybe you know how to make your own envelope out of recycled materials like grocery bags and things like that. It's really fun. So here are the pieces for the first card, and you're going to love how easily and quickly this comes together. Plus, I have a fun little ribbon trick for you. I'm starting out by adding this larger panel to the flap of the card. Now, again, I want to remind you, mountain, valley. Mountain is on the left, and that's going to dictate the front of our card. Then we have our sentiment. And I want to go to this next because we're going to do a little ribbon trick before we attach the sentiment to our strip here. I'm going to grab this luscious purple satin ribbon, and I'm going to cut off a piece that's slightly wider than the panel on both sides. I'm going to do a little twist and staple trick. For that, I'm going to use my tiny attacher here. So my ribbon's going across. I'm going to give it a twist like that. Notice that doesn't put a knot into the ribbon. It just twists it, give it a little zhuzh. Then with my stapler, I'm going to find the center, and if you want, you can give it a crisscross, or you can just do one. I like the little crisscross, really sweet. And then this is going to be placed on the strip that is next to the mountain fold. So again, mountain, valley. That's really, really important. So that'll kind of get things started here on decorating the strip. Next up, I'm going to add adhesive to both of the text weight printed panels. And I can add adhesive to the sentiment, which is the smaller piece. So let me add the pretty paper here and the pretty paper here. The sentiment nests onto the inner on the right side. And I have a fun trick for you. I'm going to show you 2 ways to attach this to this that make it very easy. So if you take your card and you take your smaller strip and you kind of nest them together like this and close them, we need to figure out where this needs to be attached to this. So if you just use an envelope, you can visually center everything up so that it fits within the envelope. Then open this, add adhesive here, and close it, okay? If you want to use the ruler, you can open everything up and get your 0 center here 2 3/4 is your measurement from top to bottom. And then the measurement from the left edge of the card base will be 1 1/4. That's gonna position this piece perfectly. So now I kind of have my ruler set. I'm gonna add my adhesive to just this side of the panel, 1 1/2 inches from top to bottom, and stick it down, okay? So now you see how this is trailing past this? That's totally okay. Now I'm gonna close my card so it looks like this, and indeed, it will fit perfectly into the envelope, okay? Now, I'm gonna turn it over. So again, this is down into the valley with the other valley fold. Turn it over, open it, and then you'll add adhesive to this panel without going past the edge of the purple fold. Then close on that, and it's perfectly assembled. It will lay flat. It will also mail flat, and it will display like with that Z fold. Isn't that fun and simple? So easy, so gorgeous. I hope you love these cards. Now remember, you can take this exact formula, so in other words, trim papers of your own, trim maybe a plain sheet of ivory or white in place of the 2 sheets of carefully mapped out Cutaparts, file them as you always would, and you can create more cards by using your stamps or another batch of these Cutaparts. You can use the remaining sheets of paper in the Violet kit and yet another set of the Cutaparts to create additional sympathy and thinking of you cards. I think these are cards I will reach to all the time. Now let me just ask you this: if you found value in what I presented to you today, don't forget to leave me a nice comment and hit that like button. It really helps our channel help other people get creative with the supplies they have and with our Club Scrap kits. I appreciate you and hope you enjoyed our time together today. And make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out on any other fun workshops we here at Club Scrap are offering. I look forward to seeing you next time.